Horne, and I'm 46 years old. Born and raised in Fairhope. I live in Montrose now, and I'm a lawyer in Mobile. My family moved to Fairhope when I was about 4 months old from the teeming metropolis of Foley, which is about 15 miles southeast of here. And the reason they moved here was to be within the single tax community, and so that the children could go to organic school. My father at the time was a landscape architect employed by at that time, the Army Air Corps camouflaging Air Force bases on the Gulf Coast, and my mother was a teacher. And so when we arrived in Fairhope, all of us immediately went into organic school. And when I say immediately, that includes me, because although I was very, very young, less than a year, Mother was teaching here, and both of my sisters were going to school. And so I got toted up and dropped off at the kindergarten at a very, very early age. And I proudly claim that I probably went here longer than any other human being, because I graduated in 1963, and I didn't miss many days in between. Back at that time, when I started, it was 8 years after Marietta Johnson's death, and there was still a very strong nucleus of organic students who had come up under Marietta Johnson, and more importantly, a nucleus of teachers who had been trained by her. And so the organic philosophy was not just something of principle and something to read about, but it was something that was practiced. And it was delightful. Every day that I went to school was a joy. No one had to prompt me or urge me or threaten me or encourage me. It was get up early and get our clothes on and go off to school, because going to school was so much fun. And it remained that way through 1963 when I graduated. And I don't want to say that there weren't days when I was miserable, but they were the usual miseries of puberty when you've been rejected by some sweet young thing, or that sort of thing, or you thought you were inferior or felt self-conscious about this or that. But day in, day out, going to organic school was an absolute joy, and that encompassed all of the things that we did. And I found out later in life, when I went off to college, when I entered the Peace Corps, when I started working for a living, how little things came back, and little things that I would never dream of. How to work with wood, which started some of my earliest memories at organic school, are making things out of wood. I can recall vividly, and it must have been about 1947 or 48, something like that. But we were all making guns out of apple crates that we'd scavenged from behind Greer's store. And Helen Dyson, who was our teacher then, was helping us cut up these things so we could make rifles that cocked. It was very important that you have a strap on it and it cocked. And she cut herself on the back of her hand. And I can see right now, looking around, and all the other kids react in horror to see that someone who was so beloved by all of us had cut the back of her hand. And that's a very indelible memory that I have. But working with wood is something that I've always enjoyed, something I've never been afraid of. And it wasn't so much working in wood as it was that we had no fear. We had no fear of risking being silly or doing something wrong. When we started making Pooh Bear's airplanes out of clay in Helen Bell's class, she got right in there with us and encouraged us. So there was never any sense that you were doing something wrong or something that was unacceptable, because everything you did was